I like that it lets me know. That's funny.
Hi, hi everyone, and hi Stefan. Here we are with writer Stefan and TikTok sensation Stefan,
Your words, not mine. Your words.
who also left an entry on our Mentalk Feminism platform and kindly agreed to talk to us a bit further about all things men and feminism today. So thank you so much. A very warm welcome to you. Hi, Stefan.
Hello, hello, Maria. How are you?
I'm very good. Yes, I'm very pleased to be able to talk to you today. How are you?
I'm doing much better now that we are on the call. You know, that brief 10 minutes of am I going to make it on time or not was pure hell. But now that I'm here, it's pure heaven.
All good, all good. We're here now. Now, to actually introduce you to everyone a bit more, I would like to start by, or rather, use a quote of your entry on our website.
Yeah.
The following. You wrote, "I was once a little sexist boy like so many others. It wasn't until I was almost through college that I found feminism and the growth it offers me. And it lit a fire under my ass that still burns bright." Hell yeah! Love that, man.
Hell yeah, there we go.
So would you be able to tell us a little bit about your journey from a little sexist boy to now a pro-feminist man?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best place to start is that when I use the words like sexist little boy, like it's really hard for little boys to be sexist because they're just mirroring what they're seeing. So I put that responsibility on myself, even though technically it would be my parents and my environment and whatnot. But looking back on it, I think that I had the cognizance to go, a different direction at a certain point, probably like high school. That's like the gray area for growth for people, I think, is high school. Like, what choices did they make in high school? And were those choices too detrimental to recover from, or something of the sort? So I think I was always kind. And I think that's the most pernicious form of sexism, is that I was always very kind to women and treated them respectfully, publicly. Personal relationships are a different story. However, I don't think I understood the value of women, and I definitely devalued any achievement that they made, especially physically in sports. Except for, what's funny is, like, I think my first sampler of feminism, without realizing that it was feminism, was there was a girl wrestler in my high school or in my district, who was a badass. Like, she could kick ass left and right. And I was terrified of having to wrestle her. And I never had to wrestle her. But having to think about why I was so scared, I didn't have the mental faculties at that point to break that down. I mean, there's so many layers. It was, if I lose to a girl, I'm considered weaker as a man. If I win this match, is it just because she's a girl, and there's physical differences, so it doesn't really matter. Psychologically, are people going to look at this and sexualize it? Like, there are just, looking back now, I can see why in the pit of my stomach I was like, just felt fear. And I think that fear always kind of stuck with me. I would call that fear now like the feminist ache. I think every man has it to a certain degree. Any man, I think, who has kind of a good moral compass to a certain extent feels that kind of ache of, like, I feel like this is just normal, but isn't how it could be. And like, for me, I think I'm a good example, because I didn't really know what that was. Like I didn't, like I said in my entry, I didn't dive in that hole of endless discovery until college, until I was almost done with college. And it wasn't because I wasn't surrounded by powerful, important women throughout that entire journey. It was just because I didn't see them as powerful and as important as they are. And I grew up in a Christian circle, and Christian circles, especially when I was younger, and especially in like conservative evangelical circles, men have documented and published the dominant amount of things written on the Bible and about the Bible, and historically speaking. And hilariously enough, in this last year, I've discovered that that's not only biblically inaccurate, that's historically inaccurate. And not only were women the founders of Paleo-Christian, practice, they were pushed out when it became law in Rome, and were basically ostracized. I mean, there were so many cults dedicated to women at that time. And I think that that's a great kind of connecting image of where we've come to now. Now it seems like the dominant cult, which is Christianity in America anyway. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but in the United States, Christianity is the most dominant religion.
Yeah.
They are afraid of anything that could undermine some of those pillars. And not everyone, like there are queer affirming churches, there are feminist churches. I just have no interest in going to those spaces because I don't believe in the foundation, but I see them working to erode that kind of befuddled and ridiculous foundation anyway. And I never had any of those resources growing up. I just had the Bible, the love of my parents, the acceptance of my peers, and the adoring or the adoration of my grandma. And all of those feelings and the value I got like from those people were almost always tied to what I could bring to the table biblically. And I don't even think I was aware, no, I wasn't aware that I was kind of feeding a diet of sexism because of just the way that the English Bible is written and the way that the language has been translated in English. And, you know, the joke is that, okay, so you're telling me that this is the one truth of the entire world and it's written in 54 different versions, just in one language. And in the English language, yeah, I mean, the English Bible is insanely sexist. So that is like the really long-winded answer of when I said I was a sexist little boy. That is now the extrapolation of that.
That is so interesting, honestly, especially hearing your upbringing with that very crucial aspect of religion, which often can in itself inherently be sexist, the way you experience it yourself. So what were the elements you talked about college being almost like a turning point? What were the elements that led you to realize, oh, actually these things are sexist, or actually I should value women a bit more, or whatever it is? Can you talk about some of those moments or turning points? What were those?
Yeah, I think back to my best friend growing up. Her name is Haley, and she was always, I don't know if she would describe herself as a feminist, but she has definitely taught me a lot about the value that women have always brought to the table, not just in adulthood, but childhood and all the way through. Just this, she's just a very powerful person. And, you know, I admire that about her. And she's always kind of like made me think about those things. And so then when I went to college, her and I went opposite ways. She stayed in Washington and I went to California, and we've maintained close contact, but that was kind of like I realized that was my only lifeline back home, sort of any outside nuanced thinking about, you know, the sexes. And I didn't realize how much of a gift that was until it was gone.
Right.
You know, and we've talked about this since, and, you know, it's whatever. But in college, I ended up meeting a professor who, I think I told you this last time, like kind of shook my world.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how the way life works out, because at that point I was in the process of going through a breakup, and the breakup coincided with this class that I was taking. And this is what's so funny about people. Literally, how I broke up with this person and how the breakup went, how the relationship deteriorated, was one of the most sexist ways anybody could have done it ever, just in general. I'm not going to go into details. Like, it just was not, it lacked empathy. It lacked, you know, constructive thought. It lacked forethought, whatever. While I'm taking a class about the power dynamics between men and women and how men are so absent-minded, I was like, looking back at it, I'm like, you can't write this shit. Like, this really happened. This is like somebody who says, you know, hey, I'm afraid of heights while taking a skydiving class. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So
the irony of life.
Yep.
But it's interesting. Did you realize that irony in that moment, or only later?
No. And I hesitate to use like retrospect, because I don't feel like it's the truth anymore. Like, when we go back and try to insert what we feel now into that story, I'd be lying to myself. The truth of the story is I was an asshole. But if I go back and say, I was just, you know, working through my own emotional, you know, mental blocks. Yeah, sure, that's true. But I was an asshole, you know? So like, that's kind of the base where you start. And then you go, well, why were you an asshole? Well, because you didn't think about things the way you should have, you know, kind of a thing.
Loving your ownership there.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. And you know how you mentioned that Haley sort of ended up being your only person to talk to about these sort of things. I was going to ask you, were there any other male identifying friends or people in your wider circle that have gone, that you've witnessed go through a similar journey as you?
Yes, my best friend in college, we both kind of were alongside. We were randomly assigned roommates our freshman year. Had never met each other, and we just hit it off. He's my best man at my wedding. Like, we're still very close, and he and I will always go back and recount kind of where we were at side by side throughout our 4 years of school and beyond. And yeah, we kind of were always playing leapfrog. I would figure something and then he would get it, and then that momentum would take us. And the crucial part of that friendship is that he was always my male friends, I'm very blessed to say, have always been to a certain extent a safe place. Nice. where I could go and explain something or present something and it wouldn't be met with hostility.
Right.
Almost like my close circle of guy friends are very inquisitive by nature. And so I think that's an incredible thing for your friends to have, because they don't just kind of take things you say and go like, yeah, like they kind of want to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. He's someone, really all of most of my super close guy friends have kind of gone on, like, if not the same journey, but a similar one. And I'm still seeing some of my friends start to get it. And I don't think it's not a race, you got to go at your own pace. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, yes, there has been male friends in my life who have also come alongside that journey. And then real quick, the funny thing about the Haley story is that we've never talked about the word feminism. Mm-hmm. She's just always been a presence that is a like powerful feminine presence, if that makes sense. So yeah. It's like, that's like a retroactively looking back, like, who is someone who exhibited these features? Oh, I had someone.
Well, let's now talk about that word specifically, feminism, actually. Otherwise you wouldn't have made the entry on the Mental Feminism platform. You would describe yourself as pro-feminist or feminist, yeah?
Yes, with like an asterisk, because I think that I'm not in charge of, I'm a tugboat, I guess would be the best way I would put it. So women of color, indigenous women, the intersectionality of feminism at large, whether that's womanism, whether that's feminism in its wider forms, or womanism in its encompassing of all forms, whatever it looks like, I'm not writing the dictionary as we're going. I'm reading it. So as women are laying the groundwork, as women who are doing the work, every day, are basically just like breaking their backs to make this world a better place, I'm keeping up. I'm a student. So I wouldn't consider myself a pioneer, groundbreaking, unique at all. The only unique thing that I bring to the table is that I'm a good speaker, and I think that I can share this message with men who perhaps wouldn't listen to it if it was from a woman, unfortunately. Yeah. And that being said, that means that I'm a constant student. So for me, feminism is just a fancy word for teacher.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very nicely put. So let's unpack, since you like to learn from feminism as a teacher and like to help be a mouthpiece for it, what do you understand it to be? What does feminism mean for you?
For me, feminism means fighting for the equality of the sexes. And as we continue to expand that spectrum of what sex is and can be, what gender is and can be, and as the world very painstakingly comes to realize that binary is an illusion, to me, feminism looks like the emotional bridge and the physical bridge that would bring the people who are struggling with this new world over to the side of, hey, this is what the world could look like if you give it the space, if you give it the attention it deserves. Yeah, I think feminism for me is like a constant self-inventory. Am I practicing the things that I'm learning, from these women? If these women were in this space, how would I be received, and would they feel safe? For a while there, every boy who's ever watched Harry Potter in his entire life was obsessed with Emma Watson at some point in their life. And so for a while there, the joke was like, what would Emma Watson do? If she was in the room, like, what would she do? Would she like put a curse on you if she was Hermione, or would she, give you like a charm? It was like, that was like my mental joke for like a good 2 years.
That's a good guiding principle.
It's a pretty good guiding principle. She's objectively great. She has an awesome book club. I was part of her book club for a little bit, and I started reading some of those. It was great. And that's the thing, is like, she talks extensively about men defining feminism, and I'm glad you asked me that, because I think a lot of men hear the word feminism and think that, like, either one, it's a dirty word, or like they don't know what it means, or two, they appropriate it to think it means access to any doors ever. Hey, I'm a feminist, so I should get in on this meeting, or hey, I'm a feminist, so I can have an opinion in this topic, or hey, I'm a feminist, I can be a part of this lobbying group, because it's, it is what it is. Yeah, not realizing that the door still says, refuse the right to serve any customer ever, is feminism, as it should be, because it's fighting. I think, what, here it is. I think I've just discovered this right now. I think feminism is the fight for safety, because if the world ideally was feminist, that would mean that men and women and the spectrum of that incredible picture would be safe to live in this world without fear of, what their emotions are doing, how they're perceived in the workplace, if they stay home, whatever it may be. That's the fight for safety. That's feminism. I promise my answers will get shorter, I think.
That's all right. Lovely. I like what you were saying there about, it's somewhere in the middle, around, as men, you don't want to appropriate the term and pretend to drive the movement, but it's also not the other end, pretending it's not about you or for you at all. So on that note, you also wrote on your entry that the lack of acceptance of feminism, for men in particular, comes from ignorance of its relevance. So what would you say to our male identifying viewers? What is its relevance? Why is it important that men engage with feminism?
It's important because it's for men. And what I mean, it's for men as much as it is for women. Because right now, all of the men we're hypothetically talking about who are too macho to take on this topic are essentially worried that it would cost them something. Mm-hmm. And I think that worry is valid. It will cost them something, mm-hmm. but the cost they're paying right now is already, I think, too incredibly high. So mm-hmm. I think if I wanted to get, that's my challenge, is trying to get male engagement, because they kind of write me off with their language of what a lesser man is. And so then, that disseminates through the internet, and it gets really hard to break into those circles. Like they're really, what's the word? Honestly, almost culty in how much they protect that masculine identity.
Yes.
So I think in order to get men involved, it would take showing men that sharing power is more powerful than holding it for yourself. And I don't think I honestly don't think, I think there's a lot of men out there who just they've never felt safe enough to do this. Like, at a certain point, you lose any desire to go outside of what is known and unknown. And that's coming from a white passing male. Like, there are times where I would feel unsafe, and I'm not even crossing the intersection of what my skin looks like or what I identify as. Like, I identify as bisexual. I would say that my sexuality is fluid, and but I'm in a heterosexual relationship. That sentence right there, requires safety. I feel safe to talk about that with you. There are spaces where men maybe have that exact same thought, and they will never share it their entire lives. They'll just die, and that will just die with them. Mm. So I think that if there is a way we could let men know, hey, this will cost you something, but it is awesome. Like, and like, not to be too grim, but like whatever isn't working. So like whatever, the current model doesn't work. So I think if this was a class project, we should be open to new ideas. You know, if it's this, I think right now the way that the world and the patriarchy is set up in this kind of world context, it's the kid in the group project who isn't doing any other work but wants all the credit. And when you present that to men, their reaction often is they feel like they're going to be erased. You know, their identity is going to be lost.
Yes.
And I would love for there to be a way to communicate, yes, and that's not your only identity. That's not your only identifying factor. You know, you are, you know, so much more than your penis, or you're so much more than the way you have sex. You're so much more than how many people you have sex with. You're so much more than how much money you make or don't make. You're so much more than the color of your car. You know, you're and like controversial, you're so much more than who you vote for. You know, I think that was the biggest unfortunate stumbling block for the feminist movement, was President Trump being elected, because it forced all of a whole demographic of people to feel like they couldn't, what's the word? They couldn't ask questions, I guess would be the best way to put it. So like once we like made that line as friends and family, you know, I did it too. People in my life that I, you know, cut out communication with because of what they were posting and what they were saying, because I didn't feel safe anymore. But the other side of that coin is I'm posting things and they don't feel safe. So if the model is widely recognized as successful, if men can see that it will cost you something and that cost is worth it, then that line that I'm talking about gets a little blurry and people get curious.
Let's hone in, actually. What is that reward on the other side of that cost?
Oh my gosh. Not only just like emotional freedom and like mental freedom, just general life expectancy. Like right now, men are expected to live almost 5 years less on average than women. That's 5 years. Like, can you just encompass that's your high school career and 1 grade above or below? Like, think about that time period. Just gone. You just don't get it. And somebody else does. Like, isn't that worth it? Like, shouldn't that be the strongest enough talking point? And, you know, they'll say no.
How do you gain those years? What's the link? Why, if you were to live in a feminist way, you know, how does that impact your life expectancy?
Yes, well, we could even go break it down. It'll be a little morbid, but there's a book. What's the book? Not Men Talk Feminism. No, that's what we're doing. Oh, For the Love of Men. One of my followers recommended it to me, and I'm in the middle of reading. I'm almost done, and she talks extensively about how, and I think this is a common known stat, but like women actually attempt suicide much more, like on a higher rate than men do, but men end up killing themselves at a much higher rate, and it's because of our impulsivity and our ability. And I, not our impulsivity, men are not naturally impulsive. I'm just saying, with that unhealthy masculinity, it's kind of like an all or nothing thing. It doesn't, instead of like testing the waters out, you know, and this sounds morbid, we're talking about suicide, but instead of like being hesitant, it's nope, I have to do this, and you know, that leads to death. The other thing that I would point out that leads to a lower life expectancy is just the stress of feeling like you have to be the only one providing. That weighs on you, you know. I mean, like we talked about earlier, if your identifying factor is your income, well, what happens when you lose that income, right? Like, think about like the mental and psychic stress that puts on you. And at this point, we have no excuse for ignoring the stress. We have the data, we have the science, we know that stress literally kills you. And God, I mean, honestly, you could go on forever. You could go into addiction, you know, you could go into male violence, right? Like, what is violence? Male violence is an inexcusable way to express how they're feeling. But violence is an expression of how they're feeling. So when you say, hey, if you want to come into this feminist space, you can express that feeling without hurting the people around you. You know, like, wouldn't you like I don't know, I guess even talking about it now, I'm like, who the fuck wouldn't want to be a part of that? Like,
exactly. Totally agree. Absolutely. And yeah, I guess the cost element is almost an illusion. It depends from what angle you come at it. You lose that hierarchy-based status of belonging to the currently predominant notion of masculinity, which is based on hierarchy, competitiveness, being the alpha male. But on the other side lies true belonging and authenticity and connection, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. And I think that we can just point to nature. Like we are doing the opposite of what nature does. Nature allows the feminine to basically either be egalitarian or rule. Like there is either in nature, there's very few things where the male is carrying the species along. I mean, I know that obviously, through procreation, they are carrying the species along for now. I have a sneaking suspicion that scientists are working very hard to get rid of that problem. It's a sci-fi movie in the making. So another reason for men to get on women's good side, we're not going to be useful in that way for very long. But I don't know. I mean, I think it makes me sad, but I'm losing the question. What was the initial question?
No, it's just that I was saying how indeed it's a perceived cost.
Yes.
But what you lose is that hierarchy-based sense of belonging, whereas actually you then, when we break down or move away from this patriarchal notion of masculinity and only two sexes, men versus women, all of that, it all becomes more humane and more about connection and authenticity. And you were saying that nature isn't about the rule of the sex either. Yeah,
you're an impeccable listener. Very impressed. I couldn't even remember what I had just said, so I appreciate that. Oh yeah, I mean, the connection is just it's real, because the other thing too is, in the last 5 years, I joined this group of guys, and we share a lot of the same traumas. And I think I realized that was why we all connected, is because we all shared some identical traumas. And one person, Brene Brown has that saying, vulnerability begets vulnerability. Yeah. The most vulnerable person in the room is the baseline. And so as soon as I've seen it 1,000 times, as soon as somebody new comes in to this group, and somebody who's already feels the safety of the group, feels the confidence of the group, shares something, the new person, even if they don't say anything, just like they light up. They're like, this is a weird space where I can be honest. Yeah. And I can share these deep personal fears and wounds. Yeah.
That's so cool that you're part of a group like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's so it's both very positive and also a bit sad, like that you are describing how that space is in stark contrast to the rest of everyday life. Hopefully it'll become more and more common, and the norm that men can engage in that way with each other.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny too, is I don't think any of those guys would characterize themselves as feminist. I think I'd be the only, maybe one or two other guys I can think of right now, but they don't, that's the beauty of it, is I don't even think they realize that what they're practicing. They just feel the benefit of it. And then wonder, it's that feminist ache, what is this new feeling of safety and connection that doesn't cost me social capital, or emotional strain.
And on that note, do you think it is important at all that men do get to the point where they embrace feminism explicitly?
Yes, I think so, because I think that, and that's kind of the ironic part, is there's this macho mentality of definitions matter. You have to have a title, and I have to be able to define what something is before I can rule over it, is kind of like the toxic macho side of the thing. And what's funny is that, that feminism is challenging that view. I have a title for you over here. I have a definition that would put you in a safer framework, a better state of mind, if you're brave enough to try it. And that's kind of the funny thing, is these men are saying that, these men, I don't know who these men are. They're invisible to me, but I know they're out there. We've all met them. And oh shit, I lost my train of thought.
So the idea of embracing feminism explicitly.
Yes, the definition. Yes. And so, oh my God, I just interrupted you. Please continue.
I didn't notice, but thanks. I thought, no, I was just giving you the prompt. So you think it is important that men do embrace feminism explicitly eventually, because?
Yes. Because once we embrace and have the courage to embrace that definition, then we can expand, we can even expand how it works even more. Right. And I mean, like, that's what the LGBTQIA plus community is fighting for an expansion of our vocabulary. And, instead of saying, oh, like, hey, I care about women's rights, but I'm not a feminist. Or like, hey, I voted for Obama, but I'm not a feminist, or like whatever it may be. It's like, why not? Have you asked yourself that question? Like, maybe you are. It's like people who are like, oh, I'm not political. Like, oh, like, where do your values align? Oh, this. Oh no, you're political. Yeah, no, you're this party. If I had to throw something at it, you could say you're not all day, and you are. And so I think there's like this fear of putting on that label, and I think the label has incredible power, because even now, looking at the critique of feminism, right? There's a very robust critique from Indigenous, Black, and women who are not white, who are embracing or who are critiquing feminism, and that's because we have a definition to work from.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important. Like, you can't critique masculinity until you define what your masculinity looks like, and that's the only reason I'm able to critique my masculinity, is because I have a mirror of feminism to compare it to. I would like my masculinity to embrace and reflect this ideal over here. But I only know that ideal is there because I have the definition that I've embraced. And that's why I think it's so important, personally.
And on that note, how there are so many men that do feel that feminism threatens men, threatens masculinity. What would you say to them?
Yes, it should. I mean, that part of them should feel threatened, just like the war criminal, whoever that guy may be, feels threatened when his secrets are getting out, or feels threatened when the allies are coming in. That, to me, that's a good feeling of threat, because that means that thing, that negative, terrible thing, in this case, toxic macho masculinity, understands that its time is limited. That's that feminist ache again. It's, hey, I'm scared, I'm losing something. Good. Push into that fear, right? Like, what are you afraid of losing here, right? Like, what ground are you giving up? So yeah, I think that's good.
I love that framing, and push into that fear. Yes, because it can feel like you used that word earlier, I think. Like, feminism is about erasing men or masculinity as a whole, when it is not. It is just looking at harmful masculinity, that's toxic masculinity, ways that are harmful to men and women and non-binary folks only, and about opening up choices and options. So yeah, I think it's a good call for everyone to examine that fear and lean into it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I love these questions. These questions are impeccable.
Thanks, Stefan. What would you say? Because, Men Talk Feminism, of course, focuses on men on the one hand, because I believe that in the same way that we white folks need to talk to other white folks about what it means to be anti-racist and an ally to non-white folks, it is on men to do the same with other men, and have these conversations and work towards anti-sexism. So what do you think men can do to help engage more men in feminism, aka anti-sexism? Because that's really a synonym right there.
That's my Should have held off my my question compliment. That one was too fucking tough. Let me think. Just kidding.
Take a moment.
Just kidding. Let me think. This is my current dilemma, you know, is finding creative ways to keep these men engaged. Or just
you do via your messaging, which uses humor quite a bit on TikTok, right?
Yes, that's true. But I'm realizing more and more that that's not working. So it's the humor is working because it's making people that I care about, women, marginalized people, whoever it may be, they feel safe because they can come and laugh at the ridiculousness of these institutions or these ideas that have harmed them their entire life. And that part is valuable. And so I will continue to do that. And when it comes to reaching these other men, I think it's going to require something else, because when you already have a very fragile ego, and for whatever reason that may be, and somebody laughs at you, you are no longer interested in understanding what the joke is or how they got to the punchline, because you feel on the defense. And of course, I would say, hey, feminism offers you a chance to examine those things, but I'm not in the room with them when they're feeling those things. So my challenge as of late, I mean, God, I've been journaling about it for fucking months, is trying to figure out, hey, is there a way to get these guys' attention without like selling out? You know, how do I say, like, hey, you want to have the best sex of your entire life? Be a feminist, you know? I don't know. Like, I mean,
that is actually proven scientifically, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's like, I think if I had like my dream scenario, like dream scenario, I would be able to take like a billion men, and then I would get 1 million men who are somewhere further along in their feminist journey, and I would do breakout groups for like no group bigger than like 7 or 8, and I would just start fucking peeling back layer after layer until everybody was crying. We're talking 1 billion men weeping. The oceans will rise. It will cause problems, but you know, it is what it is. Everybody knew that global warming was happening. And then I think, and this is my dream scenario, I think that wave, you know, let's just imagine 1 billion new feminist men tomorrow. That's one ripple. Like, that's the butterfly effect. In essence, you know, that would be what it is. It'd be sending out, oh, look at that, my little evangelical Christian guy is still in there coming out. Send them out to the world. That's what I would do if I had a dream scenario, but I don't have that scenario. And so, yeah, I'm stumped.
You are trying to find ways very practically. And I love your self-awareness just there, and self-examination of what works and what doesn't. And you know, you have been one of the 43 men, number 43. Everyone check out Stefan's entry on Mental Feminism website.
Oh, yeah.
He has left an entry trying to speak to other men through that platform. So yeah, I mean, I'm also trying to find the way and an answer, and this platform is one attempt at it. Just letting the sirens pass. Especially if you could hear them. So yeah, I'm not sure if there is the answer, you know. I think we all need to come at it from lots of different angles and ways. But yeah, thank you for, you know, just advocating through the platform, through being here. And yeah, I mean, earlier you were saying how you were planning on using the entry to send it to other men, or use it as a conversation starter or something.
Yes, after we finish our interview, I will parlay. I will just post both at the same time. If you could send me a screenshot of this, I'll say it. This is what I did, and this is who I did it with. It's great. Go do it.
And I mean, it sounds like you have already quite a few men who are of a similar mindset around you. But I guess what I'm trying to achieve with mental feminism is for people who have this mindset to maybe have something tangible and go, look, I left an entry here on this today. What do you think about what I wrote? To someone who isn't, like you were saying earlier about the leaps with your friend, who isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
But to engender conversation around this and to bring in minds in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all we can do. Try.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Let me see if I've missed out any questions I wanted to ask you. We've got that one. Yeah. So actually, on the content that you put out on TikTok, which is explicitly pro-choice, explicitly anti-patriarchy, what have been, when you started out especially, what have been the reactions in your direct network, especially by men?
That's a good question. The direct, I don't have to think about this.
I mean, that might be different ones, but
that's great. My immediate circle is receptive. I think I have to be aware of how much presence I have in a room. I'm a big personality, and that can come across as like very narcissistic if you're not careful. And that's why feminism offers practical ways of active listening. I mean, come on now, like it's not that hard. Just kidding, it's very hard, but it takes a lot of practice. I guess that's a tough question because I don't always know what everybody else is thinking. So
but based on what you did get back in terms of feedback.
That's the thing, is I think I got a minuscule amount of feedback from my immediate circle. Like my wife loves it. She's my #1 fan, and she thought she loves the unapologetic pro-choice stance that I take and all that jazz. We're on the same page when it comes to that. But I don't know how many of my friends would willingly start that conversation, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting, yeah.
Especially because I'm thinking of like a scenario a while ago where there was like 10 people in a room, right? So half of them were women, and someone brought up abortion. And isn't it funny how it always just kind of like randomly gets brought up? Like it's not ever a seamless segue. It's always like something abortion, and you're like, okay, I guess we're here now. And one person in the room, who was a woman, decided that she was going to let people know that her stance was that, it's murder and you're a murderer if you do it. And I said, well, that's interesting. I'm wondering if you've considered the fact that nationally, statistically, 1 in 4 women have one, and there's 5 women in this room. Like, have you thought about that? And that just kind of like calmed everybody down, and we just kind of awkwardly transitioned out of that conversation. Because this other person got very passionate and started crying and whatever. Something I could do at that point, like, you believe what you believe. But to answer your question in another incredibly long-winded way, I think that might be a place where I need to kind of re-examine, am I a safe place where people can come and think they can disagree or be inquisitive, or am I a formidable presence where they don't think that they can come and say, hey, I didn't like that, or I didn't agree with that idea, can you expound upon that? So this is a good moment for me to kind of re-examine the internal spotlight of why aren't more of my friends wanting to know why I am so passionate about these things. Have they just kind of written it off as like, that is who he is, or have they just lost curiosity? Because I think that losing curiosity is the most detrimental thing to not only just a friendship, but just life.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that lack of feedback, and I wonder whether that is feedback in itself, or in what way one is supposed to take that. And yeah, it would be interesting for you to maybe have those conversations with them around what is your stance on X, and the fact that I openly position myself on this side of things.
Yes.
Etc. Because you are very clear, of course, on things. They are controversial if you don't share the view. Otherwise, they are controversial, though.
Correct.
So
exactly.
It's interesting to see. Yeah. I find it fascinating that you are very vocal and open about that through your social media, but that with some of your direct friends or whatever, there haven't been these exchanges explicitly, apparently.
Yeah, and it's like those exchanges do happen occasionally,
Right.
but not as often as I think that they could.
Mm-hmm.
And even now I'm thinking, what's an actionable thing that I could do? And one thing that comes to mind is, well, there's really no reason not to, like, I don't know, have a Sunday brunch. Every Sunday, let's get together and let's talk about feminism. Let's talk about where we are aligning and where we are, and why not, to a certain extent. I'm a big put your money where your mouth is type of guy. So if someone's like, hey, I support this, how do you support this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you support this online, monetarily, whatever it may be? So this is I think that could be helpful.
Love
I think
that.
that, yeah.
I would bring us back to my question earlier. What do you think men can do to help engage other men? That sounds like a very practical thing to do. And in or during that Sunday brunch, remember to discuss your entry on Untitled Feminism and send them our way.
Yes, that could be how we end every meeting, is going to Mental Feminism and submitting a comment.
Yeah, exactly. And for anyone who's ready to submit, or first just to explore the site, the entries, and everything on it. Yeah, because I was also going to discuss with you. So pro-feminist, being pro-feminist for anyone, for me, that means aligning with feminist principles. And of course, feminism is a big movement, and there are different strands. So, you might want to always be very clear which one exactly you are supporting. But for me, it's about aligning with those principles. But being a feminist ally, for me, goes a bit further. Allies is something about doing, a practice, something, active.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say you're a feminist ally, and what does it mean for you to be a feminist ally?
Yeah.
How can men be feminist allies?
Yeah, so I would consider myself a feminist ally. I think that's a great definition to give it, because when I think of ally, I think of somebody you can call upon in a time of war. So like an ally is somebody who, when you go to battle, you are confident because you can rely on this person or this thing. And as violent as the language is, it is basically a war between what I think is safe and correct and feminism being the way the world should move, and what is, I think, detrimental and evil and the way the world has been. And so when I say I'm an ally, what that looks like is when women call and they ask, can you, for example, can you do this? Yes, absolutely. If I'm able to, let me do it, please. On TikTok, that might look like answering questions that somebody leaves in the comment section, or answering direct message questions when I can. TikTok is real shitty when it comes to like addressing bullying. And so a lot of my videos, I will address, harmful comments and break it down, tear it down, dumb it down, whatever. And then that video will get blocked for like bullying and harassing. So it's a little harder to directly ally on TikTok via like the comment section. But the videos I think the videos are helpful because people sometimes just want to laugh at just how ridiculous this whole thing is. And sometimes they just want to see somebody else who also believes the way that they believe. I think it can get very lonely. And so then when you open up an app and you're scrolling and you're scrolling and you're scrolling, and then a video comes on, it speaks to you. I mean, it's hard to measure that value. So for now, that is the way that I show up. There are still plenty of other ways that I am attempting to do so. I've got many ideas in the back of my head. My biggest challenge that I'd like to see conquered is this impossible challenge to get access to an abortion or to reproductive health. Even living in California, it blows me away that there isn't a system of getting people to California. If we are the most liberal state health-wise, if this is really our calling card, then why haven't we done more to get like a railroads from every state straight to California? What? I mean, that's a really dumb thing I just said, because there is a railroad to California, I'm sure, from most states. But I mean, specifically for this, like, you call a number, they give you a ticket, you can get to a clinic in time so you don't miss the window and end up being turned away.
Yeah.
Or
I love that. That's very concrete, how you, really support the specific cause and want it to, be furthered.
Yes, because it's belief. It's part of it is belief, a very practical belief system that this is the right thing to do, that this is okay. And it's also, it just strikes me as odd that we have this problem to begin with. And I wish I could point to a moment in time where I was like, this is weird. I really can't. But I know that this is the way it is now is wrong, and it's hurting many people. Like, how many people know that you're more likely to die from getting a wisdom tooth pulled out than getting an abortion? Not many people think about the fact that you're 14 times more likely to die giving birth than getting an abortion. I mean, it's, and women are literally putting their life on the line sometimes, and we're just saying, kind of get over it. It's your purpose. Yeah.
I'm realizing just now that it seems that you are talking about lots of big ways of being a feminist ally. You're making it hard for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, don't stop pursuing those.
Yeah.
But just thinking in your everyday lives, I'm sure that you model this already in your interactions, etc. Can you think of examples at all? I think it might not be as obvious because you maybe take it for granted that you do X. I don't know. Can you think of anything of, in your everyday life as a man, how can you be a feminist ally?
Yes. Being conscious of like my micro actions. So, I'm sure you're familiar with like benevolent sexism, right? Just asking myself the question, would I do this for a man if the man was right here? Would I do this for a man if he asked me to? That's a simple way that I kind of think about things all day. Sometimes I end up being a real asshole to people, or I'm sure they think I'm an asshole because I just walk through doors. Like, sometimes I leave, if I'm feeling courteous, I'll be like, all right, I'll open the door for all these fucking 6 people coming in. But as of late, it's like, a door is a door, open it yourself. I'll get in and then you'll get in. And then if you want to be mad about it, great. But that's when like a silly little thing is like being aware of where benevolent sexism is kind of still rooting its way through. Being open to criticism is another thing that is continually being worked on. And that has that I would attribute that to the work that my wife and I do interpersonally together. I think there's no better, no more fertile practicing ground than in an intimate relationship to practice these things. And another very practical way to do that is, therapy. She goes to therapy, I go to therapy.
Me too.
We're considering, finding a different, a couples therapist, just so we can get on the same page, because as much fun as it is to be working independently, it does help to have a third party in the room to point out, hey, maybe you're missing this, this, and this. And then, we talk a lot about, male anger. There's almost like on the toxic side of things, like a push, like, no, that's good. Like, you should be the angry one. Anger is what makes the world go around, kind of a thing. Hilariously enough, we just rewatched the movie Inside Out. You see that movie, the Pixar movie?
Oh, I haven't. Okay, yeah.
So like there's little people inside the head, and Pixar's, yes, you know what I'm talking about?
I think, do they have like a little, person for every emotion?
Yes, yeah, for like the 5 base emotions, are like fear, disgust, happiness, joy, anger. And you watch the movie and you're like, oh, this is a super sweet movie. And then you look at the movie again and you realize, well, the kid's primary emotion that's ruling them is joy. So joy is in charge of everything. And then in the mom, like a mature sadness runs the entire brain. And then in the dad's brain, it's the anger character who runs the entire brain. So there's these subliminal messages, even in like benign movies like Pixar makes, where anger should be our primary emotion. And I think a lot of men grew up feeling that way. So, and I certainly grew up feeling like I didn't know what to do with my anger. It was explosive. It was all over the place. And only, I mean, let's see, probably only in the last like 3 years have I started to dive into what that looks like and how to get out of it. And like currently, with like another very simple, very practical thing is like finding a workbook. Like I found like an anger management workbook. And when people hear the word like anger management, they think like either the movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler, which is hilarious, or they think like, oh, you must be like a really angry person. And I don't think that's the case. I think people who are men, especially who have a lot of anger in them, have just learned that that is our best shield, right? I have a friend who always tells me anger is armor. When
Right.
you put on that armor, like you feel really powerful. You feel very in control.
Hmm.
And it becomes very easy to just kind of like let that be the default. And I can speak from personal experience. It is one of the hardest habits, one of the hardest like grooves on your brain to unlearn,
Right.
because we've been doing it our entire lives, And
Yeah.
so I think I'm an example of how important it is to kind of get guys in as soon as you can, because as much as we want to hope that men are receptive to change, it's so hard to kind of turn on your behavior that you've been doing that has served you for so many years. So to answer your question, yeah, those are kind of the practical day-to-day things that I do to be an ally. Because if I'm not doing those things, then one, I feel like a constant fraud. Fraud, being an artist and feeling like a fraud is just kind of goes hand in hand. Like you just got to work through that on your own. But even more so, uh, being an ally while not practicing it daily is just kind of erodes the allyship. It's like when celebrity allies, when something bad comes out about them, where they presented themselves as not an ally, you know, their whole allyship now feels hollow because either they were unapologetic about it, or it was just so egregious that it cannot be, overlooked, kind of a thing. Um, this is. Oh, go ahead.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I was just going to say how we were also talking about before we started the recording that we all learn and grow. That it's not about being perfect all the time. We can all trip up, but allyship means accountability. And like you say, if there is a trip up, it's
Yeah.
about being, acknowledging it and owning it and just trying to always do your best. But I think ownership is key in terms of allyship.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just wanted to say, so that people don't think, oh my God, I have to always be on my best behavior as an ally. It's a lot of pressure. It's not about being perfect, but
Yeah.
about ownership. And
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make it hypocritical if you trip up every now and again, if you acknowledge it and vouch to do better.
Right. Right. Exactly. And as long as it doesn't become, a habit, right? Like
Yeah.
what's the saying? Apologies without behavior change is abuse.
Yeah, good one. Yes,
Yes. So
absolutely. Oh my God, I feel we've covered a lot of ground. I'm loving this conversation. I could go on and on, but
keep going. I've got water. I'm chilling.
looking at time, I wonder, how much longer I can go in terms of the agreed
You're
time.
fine.
I don't know how much of your time I can take more. So let me just quickly check my questions. I think I pretty much covered, yeah, pretty much everything I wanted to ask you. Yeah, and again, everyone check out Stefan's entry as well, complementary to what we've just heard. I was going to say, any final words? That sounds as if you are about to be executed.
I know, geez.
Before we go, especially, because this is Men Talk Feminism, especially to our male identifying viewers, any final words from you? What would those be?
I think my final words would be that, men who are concerned with men's issues, who feel like they are being erased because of the feminist movement, because of womanism, because of this power that is finally being unleashed should know that, you know, the patriarchy and men and women who participate in that patriarchy have hurt them as well. And that the sooner we can get to a more feminist and inclusive worldview, the sooner we can address those issues that they think are being ignored right now. So we're all on the same team. I think that feminism should be the coach and that we can get going.
Oh my God, love that. Perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, honestly, for your time.
Thank you.
It was so good to speak to you.
Great to see you.
Thanks for your support. And where can people find you? Where would you like people to direct to?
Yeah, I mean, very unique last name, so you put that in anywhere and you'll find me. But on Instagram, what is my Instagram name? I don't even know.
What's your handle? Yes, I mean, I will tag you.
Yeah, what's my handle? I'm pretty sure it's Stefan, STEFAN .VDK on Instagram. And then on TikTok, it's at Mr. VDK, all caps, MRVDK. And where else am I on these days? That's pretty much. Oh, Twitter. I think I'm just S Vandenkooy on Twitter. Let's see. I don't know. I'm Stefan _VDK. At least I'm consistent across the platforms.
That's always good. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for this. And you have a lovely rest of the day because you still got almost the whole day ahead of you.
I do. You have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, Stefan.
Bye, Maria.